everyone, Kelly here. I'm going to start sharing today about my Lyme journey. I'm going to start with just a bit of background about what type of kid I was and some odd episodes that occurred leading up to me becoming chronically sick, and then how I was diagnosed. And it unfortunately took a bit of time to be diagnosed, which is not uncommon for people with Lyme disease. Unfortunately, many people have it for many years, and the longer you have it without it being treated, the longer it takes to actually start to feel better, and oftentimes it's with you for life. So here we go. I also have Coco here with me, my emotional support assistant. So here we go. I grew up in Maine. I was a very healthy, happy, active kid. I was a dancer. I did tap, jazz, and ballet. I also played soccer until I was 13. I was part of drama. I was in, student council and played in the band. I was a good student as well. I was hardly ever sick. My dream from age 2 was to move to New York City. Both of my parents are from New York, so we would often visit there, and it felt like home each time that I went. I wanted to be a dancer or a model or actress or a fashion designer, all very, very big dreams. I was very thin, but it was just genetics. Both of my brothers were very thin growing up as well. Marriage sort of ruined that for them. Sorry, Dan and Craig. But I was very healthy. I ate a lot. One of my biggest pet peeves was when I would be in the supermarket, someone would say hello to my mom and then look at me and say, "How much do you weigh?" And very often I responded by saying, "How much do you weigh?" Which didn't go down well, but it was so rude of people just to say things like that. And I promise this isn't a video on how thin I am, but it did play a big part in why people thought I was sick. So when I was about 12 or 13, I was doing a bottle drive with my dad. So we were going from house to house collecting people's recyclable bottles with their permission in order to raise money for my dance competition team. I had gone up to the door of one of the houses, and on my way back to the car, I suddenly felt very hot. I became drenched in sweat and vomited, and then felt like I was gonna pass out. My vision actually started blurring and blacking out, and I just sort of fell to the ground. My dad ran out of the car, came to get me to see if I was okay. He took me home. My mom's a nurse, so she checked me over. All of my vitals were fine, and she just said that I needed to rest. So I rested for the rest of the day and felt absolutely fine the next day. A few years later, when I was 15, in 2008, I had joined my school's track team. On about 3 or 4 occurrences, both at practice as well as at meets, while I was running, I started to feel very hot, became drenched in sweat, vomited, and then fully blacked out. Clearly, this was a cause for concern, so my mom took me to the doctor. We saw a new doctor we hadn't really seen before, and honestly, he made us both feel a bit uncomfortable, but that's beside the point. So anyway, he did tests. He did both physical exams as well as blood tests. Nothing really came back of note. The only thing was that I was slightly on the scale of having a sodium deficiency. And so I received my first diagnosis, sodium deficiency. And I was told to just eat saltier foods. So before practice each day, I had pepperoni, I had ramen noodles, just lots of snacks throughout the day that were very high in salt. It didn't really help, so I figured maybe I'm just not a runner. The following year, in 2009, I was 16, and my school was having its winter snowball, which is our prom. I was having a great time. I had a date that year, one of my very good friends. We were dancing the night away, and then I got a nosebleed. I then went down to the locker room to, sort it out, when all of a sudden I got very hot, drenched in sweat, I vomited, and then I blacked out. This is now becoming a pattern. I ran into one of my mom's friends who happened to be there. I don't know if she was chaperoning or something, but I asked her to take me home. When I got home, my mom opened up the door and said, "Have you been drinking?" And I said, "No, I swear I haven't." And I really hadn't. She believed me and got me a cold cloth, and I rested for the rest of the night and felt better the next day. That following summer of 2009, I had somewhat of a stressful summer. My dad had to have open heart surgery, and my uncle, unfortunately, was diagnosed with a very aggressive cancer, and he passed away. I then started my senior year of high school, and I did not make it easy on myself. I had auditioned for my dance school's senior dance company, and I got in. So that was very exciting, but it was 4 nights a week of 3 to 4 hours of dance after school. And my dance school was about 40 miles away from where I lived. So it was gonna be a lot of driving and a lot of long nights, but I didn't care. I loved it so much. But also, in addition to that, I was president of peer leaders, vice president of student council. I was also involved with Key Club, and I was taking 2 advanced placement classes. In October of that year, I had done the Halloween show for my dance company, and I felt tired the next day, which was a Sunday, but just figured it was after doing such a show. I think we did like 10 different dance numbers in it, so it was quite physically tiring. And on the Monday, November 2nd, I went to school, and after school was driving to dance class when I suddenly felt weird. I didn't feel sick, but I just felt like I needed to go home. So I took the next exit, I turned around, I drove home, and I got into bed, and I didn't get out of bed for the next 5 days. I was suffering from extreme fatigue, nausea, dizziness when I sat up, sore throat, swollen lymph nodes. So we thought that I maybe had mono or just a bad virus. We weren't really sure what it was, but I just stayed resting. The next week, although I still wasn't feeling that great, I was so tired of being at home that I really wanted to go to school. So I went to school on the Monday. About 2 hours into the school day, I wasn't feeling well. So I asked the teacher if I could go to the bathroom. I went, and I became drenched with sweat. I vomited, and I started to black out. I washed my face with some cold water, and then I walked back to the classroom, but about halfway there, I completely fainted. I came to, and each time I tried to stand up, I would just get so dizzy, so I actually ended up crawling to the classroom, to the doorway, which I knew the teacher had an eyesight to, and I just was like waving my arm like, "Please come help me." He came running out. They called the school nurse, they called my mom, even the headmaster came out. They were all very supportive. They took my vitals. My heartbeat was very fast and my blood pressure was very low. So my mom came to school, and she then took me to my doctor. So the doctor that I saw, I don't think I'd ever seen him before, but he was very thorough. He did a full exam, he did more blood work. He did find that I was quite dehydrated, so he did want to send me to the hospital for a full workup. And I just want to say, this doctor in particular has since expressed some, not guilt, but just disappointment in himself that he wasn't able to figure out what I had at that time. And I just want to say, it was not his fault whatsoever. He did everything he could. He made me feel comfortable and that my symptoms were validated, and that it wasn't because I hadn't been eating or was too thin. He really believed me. So thank you, and it's not your fault. I went to the hospital. They did a full workup. Everything came back completely normal, with the exception of, again, a very slight positivity in the Epstein-Barr virus. Epstein-Barr virus is one of the most common viruses in humans. It's also the virus that causes mono. And at some point in your life, you are going to come back positive with Epstein-Barr virus. But it was the only thing that we had to go on. Everything else came back absolutely fine. So I was therefore diagnosed with Epstein-Barr virus. The only other conclusions they could come to was that I was too thin and wasn't eating, that I was pregnant, or that I was making it up for attention. That was my favorite. I was told just to stay home and rest, and hopefully I would start feeling better soon. I started doing some work from home. Friends would drop off homework. My mom actually ended up having a 504 meeting with the school and all of my teachers to see where we could go from here, because I was then considered disabled, and under the Disability Act, the school is supposed to assist in my continuing my education. As it was now December and the holidays were coming up, it was decided that I wouldn't go back to school until January. And in January, I would only go back part-time if I was still this unwell. All of my teachers and our headmaster were so supportive, so helpful, with the exception of one, but I won't name names here. So come January, February, I still wasn't very well. My symptoms were fatigue, exhaustion, muscle aches, joint aches. I would wake up and be nauseous every single morning. Dizziness when standing up or even just sitting upright. I would still get these hot flashes where I just become drenched in sweat. It wouldn't always result in vomiting or blacking out, thankfully. I also had a consistent sore throat and swollen glands. I remember with my morning sickness, there was one time my mom was picking me up from school, and she looked at me and she said, "Are you sure you're not pregnant?" To which I responded, "Mom, unless my name's now Mary and the return of the baby Jesus is back inside my belly, I can 100% tell you I am not pregnant." On a good day, when I was able to go to school for the full day, I would try to go to one or two of my dance classes, but sadly, I ended up having to give dance up completely, which was the worst day of my life up to that point. It was absolutely heartbreaking. It was like a death. It had been my love from age 7, and now I couldn't do it. Why? Why was this happening to me? Why couldn't I feel better? As spring came, I did begin feeling better. I began going to school more, seeing my friends. I had less nausea, had more energy. I was just overall slowly feeling better. I ended up finishing high school well. I got highest honors for my last semester. I was inducted into the National Honor Society, and that teacher, who was not so helpful when I was very ill, I got a very high score on my advanced placement test, which was in her class. So in your face. I had applied earlier in the year to 5 different colleges. One of them my dad made me do. He made me apply to Harvard because he had done a fellowship there. I did get waitlisted. I didn't quite get in, which I was not surprised about, but I did get into the 4 other schools that I had applied to, and 3 of the 4 were all in New York. I decided to go to the Fashion Institute of Technology in Manhattan, and nothing was going to stop me. Throughout the summer of 2010, I rested. I spent a lot of time at the beach, got very brown, and although I still had some symptoms, I was easily tired. I still had these bad headaches, still had a sore throat, swollen lymph nodes, but I was moving to New York. That was it. And with the excitement of that, I felt like I was well enough to go. So in August, my parents moved me down to New York City, my dream. I met my very first roommate, Lauren, who I became immediate friends with. And with all of the excitement and the adrenaline, finally reaching one of my dreams, I was feeling really good. On my very first night alone, without my parents in New York, some girls from the floor above me in my dorm hall came down and said, "Hey, you're tall and pretty. Do you want to come out with us tonight?" And I thought, yes. I had never been to a club before. I'd not really drank too much. I mean, maybe 2 or 3 times in high school. It wasn't really something that I did much. So there were 4 of us, and we went to the top 3 clubs in New York City. We saw celebrities. I was introduced to what would be my first sort of New York boyfriend. We were drinking, and we didn't get carded at a single place, basically because we were tall and pretty. So I continued going out most nights of the week, still feeling really good. I mean, there was so much excitement to what I was doing. The following week, the first week of September in 2010, was New York Fashion Week. A girl that I didn't know that well, but she lived on the same floor as me in my dorm, came down the hall and said that one of the models in the fashion show that she was working for had dropped out, and did I want to do it? Could New York get any better? I mean, I was having the time of my life, and now I would model as well. So from going out, as well as from that very first fashion show that I did, I met more and more people, and I got more freelance modeling jobs just to make some extra money while I was in school, and I was really enjoying it. In late October, it started to catch up with me. It was suddenly harder to get out of bed. I was feeling nauseous in the mornings, vomiting in the evenings. I was having joint and muscle pain. I had chest pain right here in the center of my chest. Those sore throats were still there, some difficulty concentrating, so it made life difficult. Just before I had come home for Christmas, one of my parents, I can't remember which one, so my mom is a nurse and my dad was on the board of the hospital for a long time. One of them had been discussing my illness with one of their doctor friends. After listening, this doctor suddenly thought, well, have you tested for Lyme disease? And it was like, oh my God, why hadn't we thought of this? I was then tested for Lyme disease, and thankfully it came back positive. Oftentimes people test for Lyme and get a false negative, which means they do the blood test. It comes back saying they don't have Lyme disease, but they actually do. There are 2 reasons for this. One is that just the testing itself isn't very accurate. There has not been enough money put toward Lyme disease to invest into better testing. But one of the better tests to do is the Western blot test. So if you think that you do have Lyme disease, please request the Western blot test. The other reasoning is the type of little organism that Lyme disease is actually a spirochete cell. So it's a little winding, little snake-like looking thing. And basically it goes in and out of your tissues. It hides in different organs, different cells in the body. So oftentimes when you're testing, the spirochete can actually hide from the test. Gratefully, I tested positive for Lyme disease. I was then put on antibiotics for 4 weeks, which is excellent because, again, doctors don't really know what to do with Lyme disease, and some won't put you on anything. Some will put you on antibiotics for 7 days, but it has been shown that at least 21 days of antibiotics is needed. So I was put on for a full month. I was starting to feel a bit better, but still not great. The number 1 question I get is, how do you get Lyme disease? It's very simple. You get Lyme disease from a tick. Full stop. You get Lyme disease from a tick. And what really bothers me is that people think that you need to be in the Northeast in order to get Lyme disease. This is not the case. Lyme is in every county, in every state of the United States, and it is also present in every continent in the entire world with the exception of Antarctica. But I'm sure if they digged hard enough, they'd find it in Antarctica too. Now that being said, yes, I was in the Northeast when I probably got Lyme disease. I have had ticks on me before, but most notably when I was about 10 or 11, I was staying at my aunt's house in New Hampshire, and I woke up one morning and I just felt a soreness at the back of my head, and it felt almost like when your part is off in your hairline and it's just a bit sore. So I just ignored it for the day. Maybe I bumped my head or something. But when I woke up the next day, I still had that soreness at the back of my head. So I asked my Aunt Mary to take a look, see if she saw anything. And in looking, she saw that I had a tick on the back of my head. Now, Aunt Mary does not do well with bugs, but she also wasn't sure what to do. So she decided that she would wait until my dad came to pick me up the following day and would ask him if he could remove it. We do think that this is the tick that may have given me Lyme, as well as a few other tick-borne diseases, because of the fact that it was in my head for a couple of days before being removed and I wasn't treated immediately. Then I had these odd symptoms as I was growing up, and because of the amount of time that it has taken me to respond to treatment and to feel better. It has now been a 10-year battle since I became chronically ill. That's not including any of the episodes I had when I was a teen where I would black out. This is only since I was hospitalized overnight, and it's been 10 years and 6 months. Another question I get often is, did I have the bullseye rash? That is well known for the indicator that you have Lyme disease. And the answer is no, because when I had that tick in the back of my head, you probably wouldn't have been able to see a rash underneath my hair. But also, it should be known that the bullseye rash is only found in about 50% of cases. So if you're bitten by a tick and you don't have a bullseye rash, it does not mean you do not have Lyme disease. Please go to your doctor, get tested, and whether your test is positive or not, please request to be on antibiotics for at least 21 days. Now, I wish that this was the end of my Lyme journey, that once I was diagnosed, that was it. But unfortunately, I get worse. I got a lot worse. I do still have Lyme. I still have Babesiosis and Bartonella, which I will talk a bit more about in my next video, but they are managed and I feel so much better. So thank you for listening, and I will see you again soon. Bye.